People don't really hate INFJs, they fear them. Not because INFJs are loud, threatening, or confrontational, but because INFJs notice what everyone else overlooks. They see the motive behind the smile, the insecurity behind the bragging, the jealousy behind the sudden silence. They read tension before it becomes conflict, deception before it becomes damage, and emotional truth long before anyone is brave enough to admit it. And this scares people who live behind masks. They sense that INFJs observe everything quietly, accurately, without effort. And the idea of being truly seen makes them uncomfortable. Fear disguises itself as irritation, distance, or even dislike, but the root is always the same. The INFJ knows too much without trying. What people don't understand is that INFJs don't use this insight against anyone. They simply cannot turn it off. Their intuition absorbs patterns, inconsistencies, and emotional signals automatically. They understand what someone feels even when the person denies it. They sense when a relationship is shifting before the other person admits it. They notice when a word is too forced, a laugh too sharp, a compliment too sweet. This depth makes people with hidden intentions extremely nervous because they feel exposed in ways they can't explain. The INFJ doesn't confront them. The INFJ doesn't need to. The truth sits between them silently, and the wrong people feel that truth pressing against their illusions. Before you leave, answer this one question that only intuitive minds will understand. Have you ever known something about someone long before they showed their true colors? If you stayed until the end, comment, "I notice everything," so I know you're one of the rare INFJs who sees what others miss. And don't forget to subscribe to Brainy Quiet Mind, where your intuition, depth, and quiet perception are finally understood. INFJs notice emotional inconsistencies instantly, even when people try to hide them. INFJs are wired to pick up on emotional shifts the way others pick up on changes in weather. A tone that doesn't match the words, a smile that fades a second too quickly, confidence that feels forced, kindness that carries an undertone of resentment. They catch it all, instantly, intuitively, without anyone explaining a thing. This ability makes people uneasy, especially those who rely on hiding parts of themselves. The INFJ doesn't expose them, doesn't confront them, doesn't embarrass them, but the awareness itself unsettles others. They feel watched, not in a threatening way, but in a way that makes them realize their emotional mask is thinner than they thought. And because most people depend on their masks to navigate the world, the INFJ's quiet ability to see past them feels both mysterious and terrifying. Inside the INFJ, this perception isn't a deliberate investigation, it's instinct. It's how their mind processes human behavior. They see the disconnect between what someone expresses and what someone feels, and that discrepancy rings like an alarm bell. When someone says they're fine but their energy trembles, the INFJ feels it. When someone acts warm while carrying hidden hostility, the INFJ senses it. When someone pretends not to care but their eyes betray longing, the INFJ knows it. They don't need evidence or confession. The emotional truth is clear without being spoken. This immediate recognition often shocks people who expected their facade to hold. And here's what amplifies the discomfort. INFJs rarely call out the inconsistency. They simply adjust. They grow quiet. They pull back. They look deeper. This subtle shift signals to the other person, consciously or not, that the INFJ has seen something they weren't supposed to see. People who rely on emotional control or deception feel suddenly exposed. Their carefully crafted persona weakens under the INFJ's intuitive gaze. And they don't know how much was noted or how deeply. This uncertainty makes them nervous, defensive, or strangely distant. INFJs don't intend to make people feel small. They simply perceive too much too quickly. Their ability to detect emotional inconsistencies strips away illusions others use to protect their ego, manipulate situations, or mask insecurities. The INFJ becomes a quiet mirror, reflecting the truth others try to hide, and that reflection is what people fear. Not the INFJ themselves, not their presence, but the unsettling awareness that around an INFJ, their emotional consistencies cannot stay hidden, no matter how carefully they try. They sense unspoken tension long before it breaks the surface. INFJs feel tension before anyone else notices it, long before a voice sharpens, before a conflict erupts, before a relationship cracks in the open. They sense it in the air, in the pauses, in the way someone suddenly looks away or laughs too quickly. Tension has a frequency, and INFJs pick it up like a vibration under the floorboards. Even when everything looks calm on the outside, they feel something tightening beneath the surface, a subtle emotional pressure others miss until it finally explodes. This early awareness makes people uneasy because it means the INFJ knows something is shifting even when everyone else is pretending everything is fine. And people who avoid confrontation or hide conflict feel exposed by this quiet perception, as if the INFJ sees the storm inside them before they admit it exists. Inside the INFJ, this sensitivity comes from a lifetime of watching small emotional signals build into major emotional events. They've learned to read micro shifts, a clipped word, a withdrawn glance, a change in someone's breathing, a sudden drop in energy. They map these shifts automatically, understanding the emotional trajectory before anyone else realizes what direction things are heading. They know when someone is about to snap. They know when resentment is growing beneath politeness. They know when a relationship is drifting, even while both people insist nothing is wrong. And this intuitive foresight makes others uncomfortable because it forces them to confront emotions they are trying to suppress. People often react strangely when they sense that an INFJ knows too much. They may become defensive, insisting nothing is wrong. They may grow distant, hoping the INFJ will stop noticing. Or they may even become irritated, blaming the INFJ for sensing what they themselves refuse to face. But the truth is simple. The INFJ is not creating the tension. They're perceiving it. The tension was already there, silently shaping the interaction, and the INFJ was merely the first to recognize it. This awareness acts like a mirror, reflecting back the emotional undercurrents others try to ignore. What truly unnerves people is that INFJs don't need conflict, insults, or arguments to know something is off. They feel it rising long before it becomes visible, and that early detection makes them impossible to deceive emotionally. They cannot be blindsided by betrayal, conflict, or resentment because they sense the shift before it had a name. This is why people fear what INFJs notice. The INFJ doesn't wait for the truth to be spoken. They sense it long before the world can hide it. They pick up on motives and intentions people never verbalize. INFJs don't just hear what people say, they feel why they're saying it. Before someone finishes a sentence, the INFJ has already sensed the motive beneath the words, the intention hidden behind the tone, the emotional agenda wrapped inside the conversation. They know when a compliment has strings attached. They know when a question is really a test. They know when someone is seeking closeness and when they're seeking control. And they know when someone's kindness is genuine versus when it's a calculated move to gain favor, sympathy, or information. This ability to perceive the why behind people's behavior makes others uneasy because it means the INFJ is seeing far deeper than the surface. People feel exposed, even manipulated people who pride themselves on being unreadable. The INFJ doesn't need proof or explanations, the intention is loud enough. Inside the INFJ, this perception happens automatically. Their intuition absorbs patterns, emotional signatures, and behavioral inconsistencies all at once. Like a subconscious equation solving itself in seconds, the INFJ senses the gap between someone's outward behavior and their internal intention. They feel when someone is hiding envy beneath politeness. They sense when someone is fishing for information instead of simply conversing. They pick up when someone wants validation, control, admiration, or an emotional reaction. And because they understand these hidden motives instantly, they often respond with caution, silence, or emotional distance, a reaction that makes the other person realize just how transparent their intentions actually are. This is why people with unclear or self-serving motives often become uncomfortable around INFJs. They sense that their real agenda is visible, even if the INFJ never calls it out. The INFJ may smile politely, remain calm, or change the subject, but that small shift alone makes the person aware that their intention was recognized. It is a quiet checkmate, delivered without confrontation. And for someone who relies on manipulation, charm, or subtle pressure, the realization that their motives are seen but unspoken becomes deeply unsettling. The INFJ's presence reveals the truth without needing to voice it. People often mistake this ability for mind reading, but it's simply emotional intelligence amplified to a rare degree. The INFJ has learned through experience that motives matter more than words. They've been burned by hidden intentions before, so now they listen to energy, not explanations. And this is precisely why people fear what INFJs notice. Motives others keep hidden for months, years, or lifetimes are instantly visible to them. They see what others try to bury, they understand what others try to disguise, and they do it without ever needing to be told. They see patterns in behavior that reveal who someone really is. INFJs don't need dramatic moments or big revelations to understand a person's character. They simply watch the patterns. They notice the small things people think no one pays attention to, the way someone treats a waiter, how they speak about others when those people aren't present, the subtle shifts in tone when discussing someone they envy, or the sudden politeness that appears only when they want something. INFJs connect these small behaviors into a larger picture, revealing a person's true nature long before others catch on. While most people focus on individual actions, the INFJ sees the repeating patterns, and in those patterns lies the truth. This ability makes people uneasy because it means the INFJ forms judgments not from words or excuses, but from consistent behavior. And behavior never lies. Inside the INFJ, this pattern recognition feels effortless, almost automatic. Their intuition scans for emotional consistency the way others check for facts. They don't get distracted by charm, theatrics, or sudden displays of kindness. Instead, they pay attention to how a person behaves at their weakest moments, how they react when their ego is challenged, how they treat people they can't benefit from, and how often their actions contradict their claims. They see cycles, the apologies that never change anything, the promises that are always broken, the jealousy that keeps resurfacing, the manipulation that appears every time someone feels threatened. Over time, these patterns paint a clear picture of the person's true emotional landscape, even when the person is desperately trying to hide it. And this is exactly why people who are inconsistent, dishonest, or emotionally unstable feel deeply uncomfortable around INFJs. They know the INFJ isn't fooled by temporary niceness or sudden acts of generosity meant to repair damage. They sense that the INFJ sees through the cycles, the habits, the repetitive excuses. They recognize that the INFJ tracks behavior over time, quietly, calmly, and with unsettling accuracy. The INFJ doesn't need to argue or confront. The pattern already speaks the truth. And people who depend on maintaining an outer image fear that the INFJ has already figured them out. INFJs don't expose these patterns publicly, they simply adjust their distance accordingly. But that adjustment alone tells the other person everything. They feel judged without hearing a word. They feel exposed without being confronted. They feel small, not because the INFJ diminishes them, but because their behaviors can no longer hide behind charm or words. This is why people fear what INFJs notice. While others see moments, INFJs see patterns, and patterns reveal who someone really is long before they ever admit it themselves. They read micro expressions and tone shifts that expose truth. INFJs don't wait for big emotional outbursts or dramatic confessions to understand someone. They pick up the truth in the smallest flickers of expression, a split-second tightening of the jaw, a forced curve of the lips, a brief flash of irritation in the eyes before the smile returns, a pause that lasts half a heartbeat too long, a tone that suddenly sharpens on a single word. These tiny, almost invisible cues speak louder to an INFJ than any polished explanation ever could. They read these micro-expressions instinctively, like a second language. And while most people glide past these subtle shifts without noticing anything, the INFJ feels the emotional truth behind them immediately. This makes others uneasy, especially those who rely on polished masks, because their face gives away what their words are still trying to hide. Inside the INFJ, this sensitivity is not something they trained, it's something they are. Their intuition merges with observation in real time. They catch the moment someone's enthusiasm dims when a certain name is mentioned, the flash of guilt when they tell a half-truth, the spark of envy buried beneath a compliment, the slight drop in tone when they say, "I'm fine." To the INFJ, these aren't just expressions. They're emotional signals pointing directly to what's real. They don't have to analyze consciously. Their mind registers the shift instantly, forming a clear understanding of what someone is feeling, resisting, or denying. This invisible insight creates a tension people can't explain. They sense the INFJ knows something, even when the INFJ says nothing at all. For people with honest hearts, this sensitivity feels comforting. But for people who hide, pretend, manipulate, or perform, it feels intrusive, even though the INFJ hasn't done anything except observe what was already visible. The deceptive person realizes their mask is slipping in real time, and they don't know how much the INFJ has already seen. The insecure person feels their inner turmoil reflected back at them. The jealous person senses their emotion was noticed despite their attempt to bury it. Even the emotionally avoidant feel uncomfortable because the INFJ notices the feelings they're trying hardest to suppress. And this is where the fear comes from. The INFJ doesn't confront the truth. They perceive it quietly and accurately, and that silent perception is enough to unsettle those who depend on hiding. And INFJs don't weaponize this ability. They don't call out every micro-expression or emotional slip. Instead, they adjust their energy, their boundaries, their expectations. But that subtle shift alone tells the other person that something was noticed. And that awareness, that sense of being truly seen, is what people fear. Because micro-expressions are the closest someone ever gets to revealing their unfiltered truth. And INFJs read that truth before the person even realizes they expressed it. They detect dishonesty or manipulation before it escalates. INFJs have a built-in radar for dishonesty, not the obvious kind, but the subtle shifts that most people overlook. They sense manipulation in its earliest form long before it becomes visible to others. A tiny inconsistency in someone's story, a hesitation that wasn't there before, a change in emotional energy when certain topics appear, a mismatch between someone's words and the feeling behind them. These cues whisper the truth long before the lie grows teeth. And the INFJ hears it. They may not call it out, they may not confront it, but they register it instantly. Their intuition locks onto the emotional thread that reveals the deeper motive, and from that moment forward, they are already several steps ahead. This early detection terrifies manipulators because they realize, often subconsciously, that their tactics won't work. The INFJ sees the play before it's executed. Inside the INFJ, this detection isn't suspicion, it's pattern recognition. They've encountered deception before. They've trusted the wrong people and paid the price, so their intuition evolved into a shield that protects them before harm arrives. When someone begins to twist the truth, the INFJ feels the emotional shift before the words even leave their mouth. They pick up on the why behind the manipulation: insecurity, fear, jealousy, or desperation. They sense when someone is trying to guilt trip them, when someone exaggerates to gain sympathy, when someone hides information to gain advantage. And because they perceive the emotional motive before the logical betrayal appears, they stop the manipulation long before it can escalate. They don't need proof, the energy already told the story. What unnerves people the most is how quietly the INFJ responds. They don't explode, they don't accuse. Instead, they adjust their behavior with unnerving calm. Their tone changes. Their emotional detachment becomes unmistakable. They stop sharing information, they stop giving access, they pull their empathy back like a tide withdrawing from the shore, and the manipulator feels it immediately. They sense the INFJ is slipping out of their influence, even if they don't know why. This sudden distance forces them to confront a truth they'd rather avoid. The INFJ saw through them before they even finished setting the emotional trap. People who rely on dishonesty or manipulation fear INFJs because they can't get away with their usual strategies. They feel exposed, caught, and powerless without the INFJ ever raising their voice. The INFJ never needs to say, "I know what you're doing." Their boundaries say it for them. Their silence says it louder. Their sudden clarity becomes undeniable. And that is what people fear, not the INFJ themselves, but the realization that their deception was visible from the very beginning, long before they believed it could be detected. Their intuition connects dots others didn't even realize were there. INFJs don't gather information the way most people do, piece by piece, moment by moment, waiting for clarity to arrive. Their intuition works in reverse. It delivers the conclusion first, long before the details become obvious. They see patterns forming before the pattern exists. They sense connections between emotions, behaviors, and motives that others overlook. A small comment here, a glance there, a shift in energy, a forgotten detail. These pieces snap together instantly in the INFJ mind, creating a full picture of truth that others won't understand until much later. This ability to connect invisible dots makes people uneasy because it feels like the INFJ just knows things without enough information. But to the INFJ, the information was always there, just quiet, subtle, waiting for someone intuitive enough to interpret it. Inside the INFJ, intuition isn't magic. It's a fusion of perception, emotional intelligence, pattern recognition, and deep psychological understanding. They notice how someone talks about their past and connect it to how they avoid responsibility today. They see how someone responds to small stressors and predict how they'll behave when real tension arrives. They watch how someone treats strangers and understand the morality they hide from friends. They listen to the way someone says, "I'm okay," and can feel every reason they're not. All these tiny signals form a constellation of insight that points to a bigger truth. People don't like this because it means the INFJ often knows what's coming: betrayal, conflict, emotional distance, manipulation, long before anyone else recognizes the signs. This intuitive clarity makes certain people incredibly nervous. They feel exposed around the INFJ as if their inner story is being read silently. They sense that the INFJ understands their motives even when they're still figuring them out themselves. They become defensive, insisting the INFJ is overthinking or imagining things, because admitting the INFJ is right would mean facing uncomfortable truths, and nothing scares an emotionally avoidant or insecure person more than being understood too deeply, too accurately, too early. INFJs don't flaunt this ability or use it to control others. They stay quiet, watching patterns unfold exactly as their intuition predicted, and when the truth finally becomes undeniable to everyone else, the INFJ is never surprised. People fear this because it challenges the illusion that their actions are private, their intentions hidden, their inconsistencies unnoticed. But INFJs see the connections others miss long before life forces those dots to connect. That foresight, quiet, accurate, and impossible to explain, is what people truly fear. When an INFJ sees this much, this clearly, they don't need confrontation to prove anything. Their insight speaks long before their words do. That's why people act differently around them. Not because the INFJ is intimidating, but because truth always feels sharper when someone else can see it first. And if you've ever been the INFJ who notices what others deny, who senses what isn't spoken, who connects the dots no one else even saw on the page, then you already understand the weight and the power of that vision. Before you go, I want to know something real. Which one of these points described you the most? Type "I see everything" in the comments if you watched until the end. Let's see how many INFJs are quietly awake